prospects, and
Yeah.
they ended up saying they would like to meet, which was great. So buyers, they're both buyers. Of course, they
Awesome.
want something that's not out there.
Well, I mean, I know we're all fighting that right now, but so
Yes.
you had 2 buyer appointments.
Yes.
Awesome.
And,
Okay,
and then I also went with, it's really
Mhm.
Bill's appointment, but I went with Bill on a buyer's appointment as well.
Okay, so you're
that
shadowing.
doesn't count for me, I know.
Well, I know it doesn't count for you, but you're shadowing, so you're
Yes.
learning, you know.
Right.
And actually,
Correct.
that's good that you went on a listing appointment, because we're going to talk about working with sellers today. So that kind of falls into place. Anybody else have any other wins? Not necessarily just appointments, but some other things. Did you do something that you were trying to put in place? You finally got to? How's it going?
I did my little pot buys, but mine aren't anything like Corey, so I'm embarrassed by mine.
Oh, no.
I haven't put them out yet, and mine were just little. I was trying to not go big like Corey did initially, but I haven't passed them out yet. I'm just still working on them, but I just did bags with different kinds of candies in it.
Okay.
And just put a little tag on it that says just a treat with my name on it, just a little something to say, you know, I was thinking of you, you know, I didn't want to, just a little something.
Well, it's the point that you did it and you did reach out and you gave him something. I don't think, you know, it's not always has to be 100% elaborate. So right. I like it. Good deal. Good deal. Did anybody after last week want to recap real quick? Any takeaways from last week's about managing your activities, maybe looking at your schedules differently? Did you implement anything from that? Did you learn anything new from it? How's it going?
Kind of confirm.
I think for me,
Go ahead, John.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, John.
No, I think it just, for me, after the class, it reinvigorated, like reminding me the same thing I said about how far would you travel for $10,000 check is the same thing. How much effort would you put forward for a $10,000 check? And so I think that, you know, kind of when we looked and blocked out time and realizing how much time, you know, we all say we don't have any time, but relatively speaking, we have time. It's just how we're utilizing it. And so I think that let me kind of take a look at that and reinvigorate my attempts to fill my schedule with actual work as opposed to busy work, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, good. Ryan, what were you going to say?
Oh, just kind of confirm my schedule as far as I find myself thinking about it more. Okay, is this a churn and burn, you know, a couple of hours, or is this where I'm just doing busy work? So it kind of had me thinking more through the day.
Right. And kind of looking at priorities a little bit more. You know, there was a TED Talk I actually sent out to one of the groups here. And I wish I had thought of it to kind of play for you guys, but it's kind of long. I may just send it to you and you can watch it on your own time. But one big takeaway from her TED Talk was that she said they were kind of doing a study about time management, right? We all talk about you can't manage time. Well, there was one lady who was part of the group and her hot water heater burst and flooded everywhere in her house. And they told her when this happened, they said, just as you're dealing with this, write down the amount of time you're dealing with this, okay? For that whole week, it was about 7 hours that she had to deal with it throughout multiple days, right? Across multiple days. And they said, now, if we had asked you to find 7 hours extra in your week, could you have found it? And she said, no. But, you know, that happened and you kind of had to react to it. So then all of a sudden it became priority. So if you can figure out what your priority is, you're always going to make time for your priorities. So I thought that was a good takeaway. I'll probably send that out to you guys. I didn't play it last week, kind of forgot about it. And I thought after the fact it might be good. So I
think we watched that already. Yeah,
you guys did. I sent it out to you guys.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but there's some folks that didn't get it.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah. All right. Well, good deal.
That's a good video.
Yeah, it was a good video. I don't know what was it, about 15, 20 minutes at the most.
It was long, but it was a great video. I liked her and how she explained that.
Yeah, I did too. All right. So this week is kind of twofold. We're going to be talking about working with sellers. Has anybody worked with a seller on here? Amy, Ryan, Terry, Cassandra, John's in the middle. Corey's trying to get there. Do you guys like working with sellers over buyers? Yeah.
Yep.
What is it about working with sellers?
Normally there's going to be less variables. I feel like, I don't know. I wouldn't say there's less work, but there's less variables in the work. Like you are in a confined space. That space can only be so many things, and then that's kind of what you have to work with. Now, that doesn't mean their opinions or their ideas or their approaches can't be varied, but it's at least one less variable than I got to find 3 to 5 to 10 houses depending on the market to show these, and there might be this has something wrong here and has something wrong there. Whereas hopefully my seller at this point has kind of established the house that they're in.
You guys feel like it's a different skill set working with sellers versus working with buyers?
I think you got to manage expectations in both of them,
Mm-hmm.
but also, I worked with sellers earlier in the summer, and you were kind of in the driver's seat as far as, sit back, wait, let everyone bring their offer to you, versus it seems more competitive when you're trying to help someone buy, like in the seller's market.
Yeah. So, one exercise they had you guys work through on here was what kind of market is it?
Yep.
I think we know. Do we know?
Seller's market.
Yeah, for sure. So when you are a seller's, you're in that position of power right now. However, I still think when you're working with sellers, there's still going to be some objections and things that you're going to have to deal with them, because it's a market condition. And when the markets change constantly, you're adapting to all those expectations, Ryan, that you talked about, right? Like you're adapting. I'm going to date myself a little here, but when I got in originally to real estate, it was a balanced market. And I mean, if I got an offer within the first 30 days, we were like celebrating like nobody's business, because you were average 120 days on the market. There was plenty out there. There was plenty being built, and there were like a balanced number of buyers, but now it's quite different. So you do end up having to change, and there's different skill sets, I think, that you learn. Right now, you guys, if you do have sellers, you're not having to, well, most of the time. Now, John's a different story. John's got a seller where we're on the market for 30 days. And actually, John, I like that I get to go through this with you, because we're having to give her updates. We're having to give her feedback. We're having to help her think differently through this whole process, versus like Cassandra, when you had your listing, you got multiple offers right away. And Amy and Ryan, did y'all get multiple offers just like that? Yeah.
I think I had like 12 on both that I sold.
Right. And even when you get 12, I mean, you've got to stack up those deals, and you've got to help vet those buyers and work with the seller in that way. But, that's a whole other class. I don't want to get too much into that today. What I do want to talk about on the listing side when we get to it is like the before, during, and after. Okay. Because I think sometimes what happens is especially right now, you get a seller lead. It's kind of like baptism by fire. You go in, we're putting the house on the market, and you're getting these offers. And I want to take it back a little. I want to slow it down to help build your skill and help build your process. So we're going to cover sellers at the end, but I want to do something a little bit more engaging in the front, because this does go in with working with sellers and buyers at the same time, about your DISC profile, the personality profiles. So in the beginning, I said Ryan was my favorite student today, because he was the only one who did the DISC profile that I sent.
No, I did it. I did it.
You did? I
Yeah.
didn't get it.
Sure did. Am I supposed to forward it to you, or does it automatically forward to you?
No, it's
I did it
automatically.
too.
You did?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did it last night.
I did mine like 2 days ago.
As well.
Okay, I'm in my dashboard, and it's not in here. The only one that showed up is Ryan.
I'm about to forward it to you. It's in my email.
Yeah. I actually saved mine somewhere.
Okay, sorry, Ryan. So that kind of fell flat.
All good.
Man, all y'all came at me with that one.
Ryan, you're still my favorite.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
I'm
you,
looking
John.
at my dashboard here, and I only see Ryan's. Nobody's even put out an order in here.
Yep, I did it. I ended up getting like 3 confirmation emails that I did it. Like it was
Me
weird.
too.
Okay, well, here's the thing. Well, I'm glad, that y'all did it, because it's knowing yourself, it's knowing what kind of personality you are. Was this anybody's first time taking a DISC test? Cassandra? Okay, everybody else had taken it before?
But mine was different than it was before.
They can change. So, okay, so that's good. Man, I really would, I don't know why, I'm sorry, I'm thrown for a loop on that, because usually I get these and I don't know why I didn't, but let's break it down. Let's go over the DISC. Why? Okay, so basically the DISC test, for those of you who don't know, it's basically a tool to really discover, explore, and really adapt to people's different behavior styles. Okay. Amy, did you learn anything new about yourself when you took the DISC test and when you got the results back? Oh, you're on mute.
You know, it's hard for me to even fill that out. I don't know, for me, it's even hard for me to even fill those out, because I think for me, it depends on the situation.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know how accurate mine is, but it probably is accurate. Before, I came up as a dominant when I did one when I worked at the other job, but this time I came up as a SC, or it says ME, examiner, steadiness and conscientiousness is how it came up.
Okay. Okay.
So,
and I'll tell you, when you have different jobs and different roles, it will change. So that's common. Sometimes these DISC, if you were to take one every 30 days, sometimes they can change as well, believe it or not. Right. But let's understand actually what it is. If this sounds like a foreign language to you, then let's just go over and just get a quick recap of it, so we're all on the same page. There we go. All right, so the 4 DISC styles, there's 4 different types of personalities: the D, the I, the S, and the C. All right, the D is basically everyone has different traits under the different personality types. Okay, a D, which is a very strong, direct personality. They're very results oriented. They're very firm. They're strong willed. They're straight to the point. They don't have time to really talk about fun things. Or, they don't want the details. They're like, give me the answer. Just cut out all the fluff. Give me the answer. Okay. I can tell who the D's are in this group if I'm going to guess everybody's, because I don't know everybody's. I haven't seen it. The only one I've seen apparently is Ryan's now. So, and I'll tell you, Ryan, it surprised me. I was off a little bit on your DISC style. Then you've got the I's. You're more influential. The I's can kind of be all over the place. You know, you're happy, you're fun, you like to do fun things, you're outgoing, you're enthusiastic all the time, optimistic and high-spirited. We have a lot of I's in real estate, believe it or not. A lot of agents in our office are I's. I mean, it's like herding cats with I's. If you ever work with a client who is an I and they can't really make a decision pretty quickly and they're all over the place and we'll go see a couple of properties, but let's go to lunch afterwards. And then maybe I'll go do this. And then maybe we can go look at some more properties. Or you've got a seller that's an I that are just like, yeah, okay, we'll put it on the market when we, I think that sounds good, but they're just very fun. They're kind of all over the place as an I, like if we have to put it in broad terms. Okay. The S's are very steady. You like consistency, you like stability. They're very even-tempered, very accommodating, very patient, very humble, tactful. All these things that they say here, those are S's. If you've got a seller or a buyer who's an S, they want to know the whole entire process. They want to know what's going on. They want to know, if everything is going to be safe, if everything is going to come out the way we think it is. They're going to be very accommodating to you as an agent. They're going to make sure your needs are met. Those are S's. And then you have your C's. I always think of C's as very analytical, and they are. They're very analytical. They're very reserved. They're more introverted, okay, people. They like to be very precise. S's like systems, but C's love systems. They love spreadsheets. Which I can't do. They love spreadsheets. They're very private. Their people battery, they're not around people very much. Their people battery runs out. They're just not there as far as being extroverted. Okay. But I think it's important that you understand your own communication and behavioral style. Because, well, I know why. Well, I feel why, but let's talk about why you think it's important to understand yourself a little bit more as you're going to be working through this business. Why do you think it's important to know what personality type?
Helps you adapt.
Yep. Yeah.
What did you think I was, Lori? Maybe
I thought you were a D.
Yeah, I'm back and forth between a D and an I, but I've tried to be less dominant because some people don't like it. They think it's overbearing.
You know, I'm glad you said that, because dealing with Ds, you just have to understand where they're coming from. And a lot of people get scared of that D personality. You know, they take it very personally. They get very scared. And when you can recognize the different traits in these different personalities, like Ryan, you're like, I'm trying to dial that D back a little bit. Well, you know what? Fine and good. Glad you're kind of aware of that. But when I learned how to deal with people with that D personality, I've learned to adapt myself and go, okay, I'm not going to give them the story. I'm just going to give them the answer that they want. I'm just going to get straight to the point. I want to build rapport with them, but they kind of really, that's not on their priority list. Like I'm, trying to build rapport with Ryan at first for me was a little tough. I was like, I don't really know about that, but I could tell he was land the plane, Lori, land the plane. Like I could feel it. I could sense it, and that's okay. So I just had to go land the plane, and let's just get to the point and get to his answers. And you know what? We were meeting for 1 hour, and he wanted to get off the call in 1 hour. Like it was done, Okay. Whereas an I could have a Zoom call with an I, and that's going to go on for an hour, hour and a half. I mean, like it will go from here to here to here to here, and you kind of have to adapt and be able to roll with the punches there. But yeah, I thought you were a D. Yours came back as an I, as higher, but your D was right there. Can I bring it up and show people? Do you mind?
Yeah, that's fine. I don't care.
Okay. So how you read this, like if y'all all got a copy of this to understand this a little bit more. You get this is the third page in. So this talks about your natural and your adaptive styles comparison. What it means is whatever one is your highest is pretty much what your dominant trait is. Okay, so on here, he is pretty much, his natural style is an I. Now, when you were taking this test, you kind of had to keep in mind this was more, work wise. So Ryan, I guess when you were taking this, you're probably a little more conscientious about it, and you're like, well, working with people, maybe you were kind of thinking about your answers in a different way and how you would adapt to it and how you would react. But your natural style, go ahead.
Well, I think in something I've learned is when I did 8 years in public accounting, I was working, it's kind of experience, I guess what I'm trying to say. So I was working with CEOs and CFOs, and we were skipping kind of that mid-level management. And I was going in there as a 25-year-old talking to a 50-year-old who was running, $500 million business. And those people are usually high Ds as well. Absolutely. And they don't want the fluff, and they're just like, hey, I got 2 minutes, tell me what I need to know and get out the door. And so I think through that experience, when I get in a business setting or a work setting, I tend to lead with that style because of who I've worked with, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then it's also natural, but the flip side of that is sometimes people, when you deal with someone that's like emotional and wants all the details. They think you're being offensive because I'm so direct, and that's something that I struggle with, is I'm not very empathetic.
Well, and I mean, it's kind of two-sided, which is why I'm saying, okay, if you know your type, if you know what you are here a little bit, and this takes practice. You're not going to get this right off the bat, but Ryan, like you said, you learn to adapt when this high-level executive is like, tell me what I need to know in 2 minutes, and then you're out of here,
Yeah.
So you're like, okay, can't take it personally. He's a D. You know what? He just wants the facts. I'll give him the facts. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to tell him what happened this morning on my way in. I'm just going to go in there and tell him. But your natural style is actually an I. And then the colors are what your natural style is, and then your adaptive style is gray. So what your adaptive style means is that's how you behave when you feel you're being observed. Okay. So like if you're being observed by someone, you're going to probably bring out another part of your personality versus your natural style. Okay. So yeah, you scored pretty high on the I, Ryan. And then the D is very close behind it. So I wasn't surprised with the D. I thought actually they'd be different, but I think in this business, being an I is great because you have to learn to relate to people. You've got to show in some enthusiasm, and you really have to, you kind of have to go with the flow sometimes. There is a structure to this business, but there is also, you have to kind of have to go with the flow, especially during the whole transaction process. So it's all about adapting. So just a closer look, this is all going to give you guys a breakdown. Looking at this, did anything resonate with you guys under any of these? So like looking at this, it's basically pointing out what the D, the I, and the S, and the C are. And under the decisive part, how you tend to deal with problems. Is this accurate, Ryan? Tell me what's saying here. And make decisions. You're very demanding, driving, forceful, daring, determined, deliberate.
Yeah, that's pretty much spot on. The problem with, or not the problem, but what's interesting about this whole chart is a lot of these words have either a strong positive or negative connotation with them. So like when you read demanding, most people don't think that's positive, right? They're like, oh God, this guy's a jerk. He's ripping me apart and always asking for more or whatever. And so I thought it was interesting to kind of read through some of these words and determine, one, how I think about it. Do I think it's a positive or negative trait? And then two, how would someone that's a high C, approach me who's a high D, right?
They wouldn't. They probably wouldn't. They would not. That's the thing. They would. Okay.
Well, they're almost offended by you, or they're cautious and careful, I think is the word how they would approach someone like me.
Right. So on the flip side of that, Ryan, could you identify somebody who's an S or a C?
Yeah, I feel like I'm pretty good at reading people in that instance.
Okay. So then would you be so demanding around somebody that's an S or a C?
No, and that's, I think that's something that's learned through experience more than like I can, stand in the mirror and tell myself, okay, when I approach someone who's very cautious and wants to get caught up in the drama of it all and the emotional things, I really have to bite my tongue and try to be empathetic towards that, although it's not natural.
Right. And you're trying to adapt, but it's probably low on the adaptive side only because you really have to try. And that's okay.
They probably know that. They probably know that I'm like really trying hard to care that, people walk in the house and they're like, oh my gosh, one of their kids' birthday is my husband and I's anniversary date. This is the house. I'm like, ain't got nothing to do with whether or not you should buy this house. You know what I'm saying? Just because you see a birthday that matches up with your anniversary day is irrelevant. But a lot of people get caught up in that stuff.
Well, they do, but you know enough now to keep that in your head, right?
Yeah,
Like,
I try not to say it, but I like roll my eyes internally. I'm like, irrelevant.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have to try really, I know when it's not natural, and even if it's not, you have low adaptability to it, you really have to try. But like you said, a C is going to look at you as demanding. They may even look at you as deliberate. They may, be like, he's so competitive. I can't with that. Right.
Yeah.
But the person on the other side, this is why I'm saying, where's one of my C's on the call? Is there a C on the call? That might be Cassandra or Corey. Y'all are either, I'm going to guess S's or C's.
I'm a combo SC.
Okay. So like Corey, if you were to come up against Ryan, or if he was a client, or if he was a seller, I mean, like let's put this in perspective too. The reason we're learning this is because when you go on listing appointments, you're going to get all types of personalities. So knowing this about Ryan, and he's the D personality, and he's got the I, but mainly the D. You've also got to be adaptive and say, okay, well, hopefully he'll read me a little bit and try to adapt and try real hard to, come across in a different way. But what would you be able to do? How would you adapt to a D if you came up against it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I had a little bit of experience with a D personality and that CEO investor. Yeah. And he just wanted the details. Like, we were being trained up to ask for the appointment. Let's go have coffee. Let's meet at the house. Now, hey, what can you do for me? What's your marketing plan? If I were to give you listings, what are you going to do? So the way I would adapt is to, after the initial friendliness, just get down to business and let's talk about the game plan to get the house sold.
Exactly. Yeah, you've got to step out of the, okay, it's not going to be warm and fuzzy, and I'm just going to have to deal with that. So, but yeah, Ryan, definitely. You're right. I mean, these are a lot of adjectives that are strong and can be kind of harsh, but if everybody kind of can see this and know that, yeah, those are some traits and these are some characteristics that describe the personality, it's just about adapting back and forth to it. So, let's start sharing. I'd love to hear everybody else's, who else is an I on here? Did anybody become an I?
I guess that Cassandra and Corey were S or C. I thought John would be an I.
I'm S and C.
No, John is not an I. I can tell John is not an I.
John's a D.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Terry, I thought Terry, what are you, Terry?
I didn't do it yet.
Oh, no worries.
Oh, guess what? I put the link in the chat. So why don't you do it? Go ahead and do it now. Do it now while we're talking.
Lori, if you don't mind, I popped on the computer as opposed to my phone, so the chat went away.
Sure.
But yeah.
Okay.
Every disc that I've taken, I've been a D. The most D that you could possibly be.
Yeah. I think it's when I first started in a sales career, because this is honestly kind of a sales career, really. But when I got started, not in real estate, but other sales career, this was one of the first tests I took. And everybody around the office was talking about this before I took it. And they were talking a different language and I didn't understand it. But what I soon learned was it's a way to understand yourself. It's a way to read people. So if this can kind of help, and we're gonna practice a few things in just a minute. Y'all love it when I make you practice and do activities, but I think it's super important to recognize, especially from that first phone call with a seller, if you're trying to get a listing appointment, if you can figure out, and it almost becomes habit. It may not be habit now, but it's become habit over the years. Whenever I talk with somebody or meet with somebody, the first thing I'm doing is trying to figure out what their disc style is. It has helped me so much on where to go with people. And I hope that would help you. I hope that it would help you guys too. Terry, you don't see the link? Okay. I'll repost it. I'll repost it. All right, so here, we'll do a quick activity. I want to know, let's see if we can do this. We're going to identify a few well-known figures. Let's see what we can do. This is just to kind of get you some practice to help with when you interact with other people. All righty. What do we think Tiger Woods is?
He might be a
I'd
D.
give him an I.
Yeah, I think he's a D.
Yeah,
Say-
most likely a D. Why do you think he'd be a D?
So competitive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. D's are very competitive, very focused. All righty. Diane Sawyer. Do we know her?
Yeah.
I know the name. I don't watch TV.
I don't really know her personality, so I don't know.
Do y'all know what, if you had to guess, like she's a news anchor. So
Yeah.
let's think about what a news anchor does for a living.
Probably an I influencer, or it has, I would think, some D about her.
No, she's definitely not D.
Yeah, I would say I.
You know, that was my first guess too. They're saying
Oh, yeah.
more.
High C. I think she's a C.
Yeah, more than likely a C. You know, C's are very, you know, think about that. Being a news anchor, you've got to get all your facts. You've got to be pretty
Analytical.
systematized when you're interviewing somebody. C's, like, I would just say they're very, and they're very analytical. Like she's got to be pretty, you know, analytical when she's sitting there talking to leaders of nations and things like that. So when you actually know what they do for a living, that personality trait starts to line up and make a little bit more sense. All right, what about Steve Martin? Please tell me y'all know who he is.
Yeah. He's funny.
That's earlier than my era.
Yeah, I remember a couple movies.
He was one of my faves. What do you think he is?
Huh?
Yeah, more than likely an I. Most actors, you know, it's so funny. They say a lot of actors are introverts, but I think in their profession, they're not necessarily introverted. They have to be very influential. I mean, let's think about that. How many athletes are, you know, paid by Nike or Under Armour? Like they're influential, right? They've got to have that personality. They've got to have that charisma because, you know, they're selling themselves. All righty. What about Mahatma Gandhi, civil rights activist?
Influencer.
You know, you'd think that.
I think he was a C.
That's what I'm thinking. Gotcha.
Actually, kind of an S.
There, yeah, patient.
Because very patient. S's want stability, safety. You know, he was all about peace. So he's more of the S category. All right, what about Oprah?
He's a I.
Yeah. Total I. Total I. And then this guy, did anybody, I watched him growing up. Anybody loved him?
Rogers.
Yes.
I think he's
Do you
an I
think
too.
Now let's think about how he talked. Whenever you watched him
Very
on TV,
calm.
how did he talk?
Very conscientious, I would say.
Yep. Yeah. And he was just very soothing and just like wants to make it safe and make you feel good about your feelings, right? So he was more than likely an S.
I want
And
to
then I don't know who's familiar with this lady, but she is an actress, Meryl Streep.
Meryl Streep. I don't know. I think she's dominant. I think she's pretty dominant.
More than likely a D, believe it or not. And then what about, I think we're getting to the end here, Albert Einstein. He's a scientist.
Probably a C.
Yeah, I mean, think about that.
Perfectionist.
Scientist, I mean, I don't know if I've met a scientist that would be an I. That'd be a disaster. Don't you think? Eyes just kind of work. Yeah. All right. So what about let's get to know our leadership here at RE/MAX Center. What do you, okay, let's start with Pat Finnick. Has everybody pretty much met Pat Finnick? Amy and Ryan, I know y'all have. I think John, you haven't gotten to meet him yet, and Terry probably not yet. But he's our leader. He started Remax Center. So if you had to take a guess, he's a broker. He runs his own company, been in business over 25 years. Where do you think?
A D.
I think he's a D.
Mm-hmm. He's a total D. But he does have some I in him. He's very personable. He likes people. He loves sales. So, but D is his dominant trait. Have y'all met Tina? Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think she is?
E.
I think she might be an S.
Okay. What are you saying, Cassandra?
I think a C.
A C?
Sounds like we're wrong.
You know, so she does have some C in her, but her dominant trait is a D.
Really?
Yeah, believe
I
it or
didn't
not.
get that from her.
Yeah. Oh no, I've been in meetings with her. I know she's a D.
I've only seen her in the classes, and I knew that she was pregnant, so I'm pretty sure she was miserable because she was ready to pop. So I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't really get to hear her, speak or anything a whole lot. So
And like, let's think about this. She is the director of operations for everything. So managing all the day-to-day and the operations, you do have to kind of have some C in you because you have to be able to analyze. But her dominant trait is a D because she does have to be very direct with people. When you're, running a director of operations, that's what happens. Okay, Holly. Y'all have met Holly on the calls, right?
D.
What do you think?
I say D.
D.
D?
I think an S. I think
S?
She's an S. She's an SC.
Yeah, at least an S. I think she's pretty focused, pretty steady, pretty.
Well, she sent me her test. And look where she came out. She came out as an I, but she does have S and C in her. No,
My
hardly
thing
any
don't
D.
look like this.
Do what?
My results don't look like this.
Your results don't look like this?
No, I forward them to you. I'm looking at them right here. Mine don't have all this graph stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know
either,
why. And I don't know why it's not coming through on my dashboard, but we'll get that figured out.
I emailed it to you. I forwarded it to you. So, but it don't have all this graph stuff.
Okay. All righty. What do y'all think I am?
SI.
D.
Ha!
Yeah, probably an I.
I think an
Okay.
I.
Yeah. So here's what's funny. I highly disagree with this test. And the thing is, when I took this, and actually it's been a hot minute since I took it, I came in at an S because I was looking at my role on the coaching side and things like that. When I do mainly the sales side, I'm an I. Consistently, I was always an I, And, even outside of work, I'm probably more of an ID. And I think you can take it like when you're, again, we've all talked about in context. When you have people in their natural habitat and they're not working and it's just their day-to-day life, that may be totally different from what their work style is. Like, Amy, do you feel like that you're like, because you were saying before when you've taken this test, you were a D. And
Yes.
in your other work role, this one is different, but then how do you feel it stacks up in your every day-to-day life?
Like Ryan, I worked with a gentleman for 16 years and he was very much a D. There's 100% D. So I became a D. I was not a D, but after working with him, I became a D. So I don't know about, I question what mine came out to be this time because I definitely have now, I have a good bit of D in me.
Yeah.
But so I don't know. It's interesting. And these are, to me, those are very hard for me to even fill out.
Yeah. Well,
It's
and I'll tell you too, I know, and I've noticed this after a while, having a lot of folks do these things. If you're sort of in transition, from one thing to another, and you're sort of in a role where you're still trying to kind of figure stuff out and you're learning, it can change. It can be this right now, but it could, I mean, I bet in 3 or 4 months, if you took it again, it may say something different.
Right.
So, but I felt like I could sense a little S in you when I met you, because you seem very nurturing and very stable and very secure, but that was just one trait I picked up. So, well, here's a question for the group. What's your accountability partners? Well, we kind of know now, right? We all shared what we have. So fail. Yep. Okay. What if, let me go back to something real quick. Do you think personality types clash to the extent that you just can't deal with them or adapt?
Yeah, I was going to touch on that earlier. I thought it was interesting. It was probably a few weeks ago, maybe when we were talking about doing a listing appointment or a buyer appointment. I can't remember, but when I was reading through some of the material, it kind of said like, meet with the people, get to know them, talk about what they're looking for. And then when you get to the part about, you know, sign a buyer's contract or whatever listing contract, there was a small blurb in there about decide if it's a good fit. And I think maybe that's where you're heading, but it is interesting because sometimes you just don't jive with whoever. And even if you know them, if you have a different personality type, it's better to protect the friendship than it is to ruin that, maybe because your personalities clash. One of my best friends, I helped sell a house and we're great friends, but in that situation, it caused a little bit of tension. And so anyways, it's interesting dynamic.
I think you do have the choice whether you want to adapt or not, because like we can talk about, like we were talking about, like you can adapt in your work environment, you were able to adapt. But I still think you have a choice, because if you try and it's just not working, you still have the choice of who you want to work with, you know? I've worked with many people, women and men, who are Ds in this industry. When I worked with them as buyers or sellers, I felt like I could adapt enough and deal with it enough to be okay. And I will tell you, opposite personalities usually cling to the other. So for example, I's are typically attracted to the D personality, because the I's learn not to take it too personally, and they don't, but they want that decisiveness from the D, you know? Whereas an I with a C, if your dominant trait is a C and you're an I, you may be able to deal with it short term. You can't relate so much and connect 100% of the time there. And you can adapt, but you're really trying hard. Like even on my adaptive style, adapting to a C sometimes, if that's your dominant trait, I can do it. But then there's a point where I'm going to have you meet me halfway too, you know, if I'm an I. So what I was going to bring up and show you on here is just be aware and just be conscious. Like if you're looking at this wheel, if you're diagonal across, that's typically the hardest trait for you to adapt to. So Ryan, does that make sense for you, a D and an S?
I don't know. I'm very analytical, which I think is the accounting side of me. But as far as like careful, I'm not careful at all, and I don't understand that.
So.
But I also, what's interesting to me, and I don't know if I kind of open this to the whole group, but there's something I was just thinking about. In a transaction, you may deal with someone who is your client, right? You're saying, hey, I represent John, right? John is my seller. But then how I interact with everyone that's trying to buy my house or buy John's house may be a different personality, right? Like I go to John and I'm like, hey, John, this is what we're working with. And I try to be more empathetic, and it's more of an I, and, you know, build rapport, and you're my client and I'm here to help you, blah, blah, blah. But then when I go talk to other agents who are trying to buy our house, then I think more of the high D comes out, where I'm like, all right, it's game time, game face. I'm going to go to war for my client. So it's an interesting dynamic of like mixing the two. And I think that's where my friend and I kind of had tension. Was, to him, I'm his friend and it's just a friendship. But then in a transaction setting, I was like, hey, this is not that it's like a different me, rude me, but it was more of a like serious, dominant, you know, let me do my thing. This is how I operate. So it was almost like split personality a little bit. And sometimes your client may see that other side of you and vice versa. And so it's interesting.
So real quick question, was your friend a D also?
No, he's not.
Okay. What did you think? Did I miss that? What did we say you think he was?
I mean, I don't know if my mom knows. I would say he's probably a S or a C.
Okay.
He's, yeah, I would say he's probably a S or a C.
Okay.
But that's where we kind of, you know, clashed, was some of my D traits and his, you know, I'm like, hey man, this is how and I think he got offended by it. Whereas to me, it's just a transaction, right?
Right.
I don't have emotions involved in it. To me, it's a transaction. We're trying to get you the most money.
Right.
Whereas he was like emotionally invested in it. And I'm like, hey, emotions don't matter when you do a transaction. You know?
but
they do to your client, but on the, to me, when I was dealing with the other people, it was just more black and white.
Well, and okay, so you bring up another good point, because let's talk about the transaction and talk about the circus of personalities that are going to be involved in a transaction. Not only do you have your seller, you have yourself, you have this, if there's a seller's family involved, meaning a significant other, you know, those two, both of their personalities. So you've got those two personalities on your side, your own. So there's 3 right there. Then we're going to talk about the other side, like you just talked about, Ryan. You have a co-op agent, and you're going to also kind of have to identify and play nice with that co-op agent, with their personality, and how you're going to work together with that personality, because really you kind of have no choice but to adapt to that co-op agent. Do you not? Like, if you're a D and that other co-op agent is a D, get ready. Like, that's going to be,
yeah,
hopefully you can get the deal done and keep it straight. But 2 Ds coming up against each other, you guys are very alpha, and this is women Ds as well, not just male Ds, but women Ds, very alpha. And it's going to be very competitive, because they want to win and you want to win.
Yeah, I think it comes down to, well, and you're referring specifically to negotiation, but in sizing people up, there's leverage in that, right? If I'm going up against an agent who is, you know, maybe not a D, then maybe there's leverage for me, or someone else may say, well, no, you don't have leverage at all, because I'm going to tell my people that you're just trying to dominate the whole thing. You know what I mean? It's an interesting dynamic.
It is. And then you have the buyers that are buying your seller's house.
Yeah.
You know, now that sometimes can't always come through unless it's a very high D personality buyer that's working with an agent who might be an S or a C and is kind of dominated by them. That will come through, and you'll see that in the agent. If the agent is not, if they may be a weaker personality type, for lack of a better word, I'm saying a weaker personality type, but can be controlled more by a D, or a very strong personality.
Yeah.
So you are going to have to like adapt in that situation now, when who you decide to work with. From, you know, you're starting from ground zero, and okay, do I want to work with this buyer? Do I want to work with this seller? Yeah, if you feel like the personalities, it's not going to be a win-win, that's your choice. So you're learning yourself, and then you're learning these people, and it's okay to walk away and it not be a fit, because not everybody's for everybody.
Yeah, but I'm not in that point in my career where I can pick and choose.
Okay. Well, then
that's
you
where
just,
I'm at. That's the
okay,
same thing.
so then,
like I
Go ahead.
Client, I have to deal with it because I can't afford to. I have to adapt whether I want to or not. I'm not that far enough in my career where I get to pick and choose. Oh, I don't like you. I don't want to work with you. I'm not there. I'm the same way as him. I'll take anybody right now.
Yeah, but can I put a positive spin on that? Because I was in the same shoes there. Okay. And I remember, because of my I personality, I was super scared of D personalities. I wanted to run. I did not want to deal. I would get so nervous working with a D personality, but I had no choice. I was like, I have to work with this person no matter what. And that just built that internal muscle in my skill a whole lot more. And then I learned how to deal with them, and I wasn't so afraid. And then I was more confident, and then I could make more choices down the road, because I was like, all right, so in my phase of life right now where I have to take just about anybody who I get, at least I know how to deal with them. So there is a positive spin on that, in my opinion. So, I don't know.
I lost the last bit you said there.
Oh, my internet connection. I was just saying how working out of your comfort zone and working basically with adapting to people that you really don't want to work with, but you have to because you have no choice. It builds your confidence. You get more experience on dealing with different personalities for the future, really, is all I was saying. So I feel like there's a positive to it by just not being able to make the choice right now, but kind of taking it and rolling with it and doing it. So, all right. Thoughts, comments? How do we feel? Do you feel like you could tell somebody's personality over the phone, or do you feel like you'd have to get in front of them a little bit more?
I think it's tough over the phone because most people use a guarded approach to most conversations unless you're in person. And obviously us video chatting is a little bit different but on the phone, I think a lot of people are very hesitant to put their real selves forward, just for lack of knowledge of who you're speaking to. So I think that's just at least my take on it.
I think that's why it's important to get that face to face, because I mean, you can talk to the same person on the phone with that first initial contact on the phone or whatever, but it could be a little bit more different when you see them in person and talk to them in person. So I mean, I think that's why it's so important to get that face to face, because I think you can feel more, like when you're with somebody, you can feel more body energy and, all that kind of, like how this person is dealing with this and, interacting. And so I think it's, yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes they just tell you over the phone, say, look, I don't have time for all this. Just give me the details.
Mm-hmm.
Basically what that investor told me. He said, look, I'm a CEO, I'm busy. I'm just used to asking people questions and they give me an answer and we move forward. He basically told me he was a D.
Yeah.
Straight up.
Well, that's like that. I don't know what that was recently. I don't know who it was. I can't remember who it was in this group, or maybe it was Marcus, where he came across someone that is in sales and he's like, hey, I'm not an A, B, or C. What he called him out on the sale approach, because that client or whoever he was dealing with happened to be in sales too. So he knew how, I think it was Marcus, that had that little bit of a story, and that guy ended up being a salesman himself and basically called out Marcus. It was like, hey, I already know where you're going. I know what you're fixing to do. I know what you're about to say, blah, 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 blah. That is a fear of mine, is coming across someone that knows our side and how we do things, and that being called out on it. But I don't know, I think it'd be, to me, I think I could spin it a little bit and be a little bit more comfortable with that person now that, no games are being played. He knows, whatever, I wouldn't have to, play. So we know how we're going to deal with each other. But that's, I mean, to me would be a little bit terrifying, is coming across someone else that is also in sales and knows the game, and then trying to figure out how to pursue further, I guess. And but I remember that little story. I'm pretty sure it was Marcus, but I I thought it was hilarious, and it's something I'm terrified when I heard it. I'm like, I'm terrified. What happens when I get called out on something like that? And
so you're afraid somebody's just going to call you out on, like, on, I guess, on what though? Like, we're all just making a living.
Strategy, like the strategy of the sales
Oh, okay.
and everything like that. This guy also was in sales. He knew the pitch. He knew how to basically what we're doing right here, learning and trying to figure out, reading someone. But when you come across someone like, say, I'm new, I'm still trying to figure things out, but this person has 20 years experience, and I get a, hey, how are you? And he's like, bam, like, I already know what you're about to do. You're about to say this, you're about to do this. He knows the steps. Like, so it's kind of that's what I'm scared of, is being called out, I guess. And I'm trying to practice my skills in a new environment versus coming across someone that's been doing it for a long time and seeing me as a little fish, whether they've been a big fish for a long time.
Anybody scared of that? Anybody else scared of that?
I think it's another interesting dynamic to think about when like I've had males call me in a husband and wife situation, and the male is typically the spokesperson, but that doesn't mean he's calling the shots. So trying to navigate, well, all the conversations are being funneled through him and his personality type, but at the end of the day, it's to get her an answer. So I think the being in person and being able to talk to both of them, or even had success, talking on the phone to both of them at the same time, even though you're not in person, because then you can get a feel for like who's calling the shots, right? Or mom had someone who the house was for the son, but the mom was making every decision. He was just kind of there, and then it got to a point where he's like, hey, if she likes it, we'll get it. He just kind of threw in the towel towards the end. And so dealing with when it comes to two people, a couple, they're even probably going to have different personality types, even though all the conversation may be funneled through one person that's not making the decision.
Well, and find out what they do ahead of time so you can kind of mentally prepare. If he's like, I'm the sales manager for, I don't know, Home Depot. I don't know something. Or I'm a corporate sales manager. When they're like corporate sales, yes, they've all had 50,000 different trainings on how to move the sales process through. But really, all we're trying to do is, I remind people in real estate, Cassandra, tell them you had a Corey. Corey, sorry, I got distracted. I saw Corey was like, just tell me you have a $2 million deal. I think, what it is you're just getting real with people. And if they're like, you're trying to sell, I know what you're doing, you're trying to push me, and just say, look, you know what, this is how I make my living, but I explain your why to them, explain why you're doing it, and maybe they connect to it, and just say, listen, you want something, I'm here to help you with it. That's all I'm trying to do.
I'll tell you from my perspective, I work obviously inside of sales, worked inside sales for the better part of my adult life. When I have someone who tells me, I'm in the business, the best thing that I can say, then I followed up with, I say, well, then you know how this works. And I find that saying that, whether I know all the steps that they know or they know all the steps that I know, I am acknowledging their knowledge base, but I'm still doing my job. At the end of the day, it's our job. It can't be. And the other piece of the puzzle is that's normally the exception as opposed to the rule. Of the 100 people I see a month, I might see one of those every 2 months. So I don't want to plan my comfort level around the one person that may, in parentheses, call me out, whereas the other 99 plus 199 people are oblivious to the process. But realistically speaking, we have a thing in my office that 100% of the people get 100% of the presentation 100% of the time, regardless to their background. Does not matter, because some people say that I've been in the business, I've been in the business 50 years, but they did it 50 years ago. It's not the same business. So
well, and you know what, I'm glad you said that. I was actually having a conversation with an agent the other day, or yesterday actually, and she was talking about, she's like, well, I feel like, my client, my sphere, people who have already bought and sold a home, they know the process. And I was like, well, they don't do it every day. Like, they don't do it every day. And if they bought a house 5 years ago, they're not going to remember the whole entire process. And the market's changed from 5 years ago. Like, we've had a big, huge turn. Things are not the way they were 5 years ago. So you're going to need me, and you're going to need my skills right now in this market.
Yeah, who's to say they actually even had a good experience?
Well, and I mean, you know, somebody, and I always relate that to like, alrighty, I'm sure I did something around my house that was a DIY that I did, painting. Okay, I painted myself. Do I ever want to do that again? Not really. So, but I don't do it every day, and it was a rough experience for me because I did it all on my own. I don't want to do all that again. So I totally see the value in somebody else, you know, in somebody else doing it. And I don't paint every day, so my skills are not great, and I don't know how to not get paint everywhere, you know? And that's just an analogy that I'm just going to give. That's a simple one, but same thing with real estate. I mean, you know, you're not a plumber. You're not going to change out your whole entire faucet, are you? I mean, I wouldn't. I'd hire somebody to do that because I don't do it every day. I could look it up on YouTube. Still not going to do it. So always remember that. People may say they did, and you're going to also get, I was a realtor and I still, you know, I was a realtor too. Well, how long ago was that? You know, because you're going to run into that also. All righty. Well, let's talk about if you do get a listing, or when you do get your next listing appointment, what you're going to do. Okay. I want to talk about, I like to always break it down to the before, during, and after, because I think just having some of those steps there is just going to help you develop your skills, but also just help develop your system. Okay. So let's talk about before the listing appointment. And y'all might, some of y'all who have gotten a listing appointment, you've got a listing like Amy and Ryan. I know you said you had a listing and John's got a listing, but let's talk about the before. So when you're talking to them, typically you're on the phone, you got to try to establish some of the rapport with them. But have you asked the seller to tell you more about their home, like how long they've lived there? You know, like when you get them on the phone, what is the conversation that y'all have had? Are they just like, come over and list my house, or?
Yeah, I don't want to be told about their home over the phone, other than,
Okay.
you know, maybe high level stats as far as like bedroom, bath, neighborhood, because I can do the research on my own. But I think the big thing, and the material kind of touched on this, is have them give you a tour.
Yeah.
Because they're going to tell you what they think is great about their house. Like my buddy that sold his, he thought this accent wall that he put up was the greatest thing since sliced bread. And it was a great feature, but you can kind of tell in the inflection of their voice or things that they point out what they think is unique or what makes their house, you know, the best house in the neighborhood.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you guys aren't doing a two-step approach, I'm a big advocate for that. I know we can do, and we're going to pull stuff ahead of time. You're going to pull information on the house. Like Ryan, you were just saying, I can look all that up. And that's usually the first go-to. I'm going to the tax record and I'm looking that stuff up just to get an idea before I talk to them just a little bit. But I do want them telling me a little bit about their house. But I also like to go over, and I like to do a two-step where I preview the house first, get them to tour me around, and I'm talking to them because I like to know what kind of person I'm dealing with, but also I want to see the house. I mean, I want to see what's going on there. Are we going to have to talk about staging eventually when I come back? Because I like to come back for a second appointment. Anybody done a two-step where you do that? You go and preview it, say, okay, you know what? Now I want to take this back. I've done some preliminary research, but this helps me. And I want to come back with all the data and the facts, and we can talk about the value at our next appointment. How do you feel about doing that?
I did before back like 5 years ago when I first had my first listing. But that's what I was told to do a two-step just like that. See the house, go back home, take pictures, and then evaluate the house and come back and with them again with your list price and this is where you think we should be at. So yeah, I done that one before. It worked. I got the listing, but I just like to now. I mean, I haven't had a listing appointment in a minute, so I really can't say what would I do now. But I think I'd rather just get it all out the way the first day. I think I can sell them over then.
One step.
Yeah.
You're the fan of the one step. Okay.
Yeah. Now I am.
Now.
But I said in the beginning, I did the 2-step.
I think as you become more experienced, you can definitely do one step, you know, because you're out there seeing what's on the market. You get familiar with the products, you get familiar with the area. And I think that's a skill that you build up. But I'm going to make a suggestion as you're first starting, go preview it first. You get to learn a lot about them. You get to learn a lot about the house. And I'm going to tell a war story real quick. But I remember the first listing appointment I went on, I looked up everything beforehand and I went on the appointment and I didn't really ask any questions beforehand. I was just concerned about getting the appointment, which was fine, you know. And I go there and they had totally renovated the whole entire house and I totally was not expecting that. And I didn't know how to think quick enough on my feet then to try to adjust. So it would have been helpful to be able to go and see all that, take it back, because I came back anyway. He gave me a second chance and I said, can I do more research and come back? And he did, he gave me a second chance. But anyway, so I do recommend it. I do recommend it. Are you hesitant to talk to the seller prospect about doing a 2-step and saying, hey, I want to come by and preview and then we'll come back and talk value later? Are you hesitant on that?
The approach I take actually is just a 2-step. I mean, that's just in its design. I show up if I'm going to do at least the ones that I've been on, the listing appointments I've been on have been preview appointments. And for me, I do it as a way to allow the relationship to breathe some. I don't want to come in and I know everyone's aware I'm a D, but I don't want to come in with the hard sell first off the bat. I feel a lot of people, especially in this market, you know, and the number of agents as opposed to number of houses for sale, I think most of everyone has touched an agent once or twice prior to us. And so I'd rather come in with a little bit softer approach than trying to just, you know, hey, I've done all this research on your home. I know everything about everything. I do let them kind of present me the home, kind of like how Ryan had mentioned. Let me hear their hot buttons. And then I actually don't even ask for the business when I'm first there. It's just not, I feel not asking for the business is counterintuitive, but I have found, at least on the few that I've been on, everyone like reaches out to me after the fact. I'm like, hey, you know, I'd like to hear more about what you were talking about. Kind of leave, you know, like a cliffhanger, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Amy, if I can ask you, I'm super curious because I know you've been shadowing Bill on like listing appointments. And I know he's a veteran, so he's probably just a one-stepper, I'm going to guess. But how did observing all of that, how did you, what did you pick up from being on some of those listing appointments?
Well, yes, he's a one-stepper. And a lot of these people know him. I mean, it's all people, you know, he's actually selling to people's children now. So that's who we just met with this week, was a younger couple who are looking in the area. And they just, I mean, he is so good at sales. He is just so good at it that they just, you know, basically we just came in and met at the office and came in and sat down and he just talked to him. We talked to him for probably over an hour. And I mean, to me, it seems so easy how he does it.
Right, I know.
But
I think
I'm going to have to learn some more. Yeah, I'm going to have to learn. I don't know that people, you know, people ask me questions and I don't know the answers. So, and he's actually gone with me on all of my appointments with me just because I feel like he's my safety net.
Yeah.
And he can answer a lot of questions that I can't answer, that I don't know yet. And I may think I know, but I don't necessarily want to tell somebody incorrectly. So, but I feel like I need a presentation. He doesn't do a presentation. Right. He doesn't do any of that. But for me, in this day and time, being a new agent, I feel like I need those things to make me feel relevant and with the times. And I know all the younger people, they they like all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I feel like I have so much more to learn.
Yeah.
Outside of what he has taught me or I've seen him do.
Well, and Amy, if I can say, just speaking from this side too, I definitely highly recommend a listing presentation that you take with you. It gives you kind of a crux, you know, it's your lifeline in a way, right? It kind of keeps you on track. You will probably start moving eventually after you do this for a while. You'll start moving from presentation mode just to conversation mode. Probably kind of what Bill does, I'm going to guess. And you're just talking and you're not doing more of the presentation type dog and pony show, where I feel like in the beginning, you want to talk about your value and you want to show your value, but you're not, you know, you're still kind of building that skill and working towards it. So I totally think that that's really, I think everyone should start off with that. We all need it. So, and I do have a listing presentation, like one for a Remax one. I think, Amy, I sent one to you, and I think the group, if y'all need one, I'll send one out with the homework recap and everything like that.
I've worked on it. It's just, there's some things I don't, we probably need to meet about that too.
Yeah, I know. We're getting there. We are rescheduling. Now, when you're going on a listing, you know, there's definitely competition. And I think that when you're competing with other agents, you're always going to want to try to stand out a little bit. Okay. So if there's one thing that I can tell y'all about that I think maybe not all agents do this, some do, they do a pre-listing packet, you know, and they do this a couple of different ways. So if you're doing a 2-step process and you go and you preview the home, you can bring your pre-listing packet. And basically what your pre-listing packet is it's just, and you can actually email it before you get there if you want to do something digital versus paper, whatever you want to do. But it introduces you and how you serve your clients. It kind of tells you a little bit about yourself or your team. And then you could also put your marketing plan in there if you want to, or you can save that for later when you actually go back on the actual listing appointment. But a pre-listing packet will just introduce you a little bit more to that seller if you don't really know them very well, you know, and they don't know you. But at least it can be a pre-listing packet can consist of the whole entire selling process. Like we have seller booklets here that you guys can buy to be able to, you know, send to your sellers ahead of time or bring it with you and leave it and just go, hey, look, if it's been a while since you sold, this just outlines the process and a little bit about me. So just have a look through this. Or if it's digital and electronic, you can send that as well, just to stand out and just to be different, because it's competitive. Here in the metro Atlanta area, it's competitive. You're competing with a lot of other agents out there. You're competing, especially in this area, and you're just competing with people that they know. So if you want to stand out, especially as a newer agent, and maybe you don't have, you know, a lot of history behind you, this can actually just make you look like, okay, I'm professional and I have a system in place. So a pre-listing packet is something good that you can work on to help develop, and we've got resources for you, okay? And then after you've done that, you're still kind of, you know, beforehand, you're also preliminary looking at numbers, I think, before you go, just to have an idea. So you're pulling from MLS and Georgia MLS. Question. They did talk in the videos about absorption rates and absorption reports. Do you guys understand what those are? Because I was going to run through them, and just so you kind of could understand what it is and where to find them in FMLS. Okay, hang on.
Yeah, I don't know.
Right. Without having
I'm sorry?
to calculate it.
I'm sorry, what was the question? What was the comment?
I said it should all be on the dashboard, right?
Yeah, so, well, that's actually a market activity. I was going to show you guys how to actually pull an absorption report. Okay. Here, let me get here.
Can you go back to the?
Yeah. Alrighty. Y'all can see this, right?
Yeah.
All right. So we're in FMLS, and what you want to do is you want to go over to reports and go to absorption analysis. Okay. Basically what absorption analysis is it's showing you the rate at which homes are staying on the market and being sold and how long it's going to take to happen. Okay. So when I logged into FMLS, I went to reports, absorption analysis. And then you actually get to pick all of your variables that you want to put in here, okay? So the property type, I'm going to keep it simple, residential detached, but you can do it with land, commercial, residential developed lots, all property types, right? I'm going to choose an FMLS area. I'm just going to choose my area, 62. I'm going to see what the high school area, what the absorption is in my high school area. So I'm going to go to North Gwinnett High School, because I like to drill it down by schools, because we tend to lean on all of that when we're looking at comps and analysis and things like that. So I'm choosing North Gwinnett. And I'm just going to go back 60 days. I'm going to go back a month, but you can go back up to 12 months to get a picture, okay? But I'm just going to go back one month. You could actually drill it down by subdivision if you wanted to. I'm not going to do it. I'm just doing the big high school cluster, okay? And I'm using any age. I'm not going to do new construction. I'm not going to do just resale. I'm going to put it all in there, okay? When I run my report, this is what it looks like. All right, so what they do is they break this out into price points, 100 to 149, and it goes all the way up to 5 million. Okay, so this is the price point. So if you're going on a listing appointment and you've preliminarily pulled the neighborhood, and you're like, okay, it looks like these homes are going to be in the 4 to 450 range. Well, let me see how fast those are selling. And let me see if I can see any kind of competition in the area, right? So let's just say 400 to 449, right? Well, this tells me, this first line right here, how many sales there were in the last month, 8 in this price point. The average days on market were 17. Total days on market was 17. Sales price to list price ratio, so what it sold for over what it listed, 102%. So obviously things are going over list price in that price point. Sales price to original list price, 101%. There's only currently 5 active homes in the 400 to 449 range, and we've only got 1 month worth of inventory. So what that means is, you know, in 30 days, things are going to pretty much sell in 30 days. I mean, like 1 month time period is really all we've got to get a home in that price point sold. Okay, so the reason this is helpful is, again, you're going to get the question, well, how long do you think it's going to take me to sell my house? You're going to get that every seller asks that question no matter what the market is. And right now they think they're going to sell their house in 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. I mean, do they not? I mean, shoot, I kind of think I'd sell my house in 30 minutes, but I mean, I think that this is a helpful tool that you guys can use to practice on.
Hey, Lori, I have a question.
Okay.
How did you know you were area 62? Where do you find out stuff like that?
Oh, okay. That in FMLS, there is, hold on.
There's a map somewhere.
There's a map. You know what? We actually have that map for you. And it breaks it down. And actually, Ryan, I wouldn't get too attached to these anymore because they're getting ready to do away with areas in FMLS.
Got it. There it is. Area map. That looks like Georgia FMLS.
Yeah.
Georgia. Oh, there it is. Yeah, I see
right
it.
Here.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it breaks it down. And again, I learned by areas. So like I could tell, hang on. By blowing this up, I could tell over here in area 62, that covers Beaufort, Suwannee, and Duluth.
I think I asked my dad this once and he said he just knew.
Well, I mean, it's, yeah.
I was like, thanks, Dad, that was helpful.
You're like, Bill knows all. Okay, so, but yeah, but like when you're dealing with other counties, this is a good map because, you know, like South Forsyth is usually 221 and 222. North Fulton is usually 14 and 13. But these are going away. I don't know why FMLS is doing it, but it's going away.
And we'll search by what? County? How will you search?
Yeah.
County and probably school district.
Zip code.
Yeah. But again, you're going to, like I said, absorption reports help. Use this as a sneak peek before you go on your listing appointment. Okay. All right. So it is important. Yes, go ahead.
Back at on the thing on where we were just at, the screen that you had pulled up,
Absorption report.
Okay, so remember when the Valley team was saying about I don't know, I guess the turnaround of each neighborhood if it's under 7% or something like that. Is that part of this?
No, that's a good question. Okay, so let's share that with the group.
It's kind of how you can tell if if this neighborhood's willing to start selling, you know, that kind of thing. I remember them talking about that because I was talking about going after my old neighborhood and how they're just, you know, it was mostly elderly people, and they're like, well, you know, if only so many homes have sold in the last year in that neighborhood, then that's probably not a good neighborhood to canvas. And I was wondering if that's if I did just the neighborhood instead.
I think they were trying to make it sort of simple by saying, take a look at the neighborhood itself and seeing how many sales are in there.
I just didn't know if this is this is something to use to kind of
yes, because in a way, yes, because you can drill it down by subdivision in here and you can see what the absorption report is for that subdivision. So this is another good tool to be able to use that and see it.
Okay.
A more simple way is just to pull up the neighborhood and see what sold in the last year. And if there's no homes, then you're like,
okay.
You know, so, I mean, either way, I mean, they're both simple and they're both quick.
Okay.
So, but that's a good question. Yeah. That question was because Cassandra was thinking of farming an area, a neighborhood, and to make a decision on what neighborhood to farm, you need to know if there's sales in there and how quickly they sell, et cetera, et cetera. Alrighty. So that's all before the appointment, right? See, like, guys, we have value, like we have skill. We're doing stuff for these people. So when they're wanting you to do it for 4%, I don't know, kind of put some value on your time. You're coming out there, you're doing this, you're analyzing this data a little bit as much as you can, even if you're an I. But at the time, you know, you've got a lot of prep work before you do it. And then when you actually get there, I think if you're doing the 2-step or the 1-step, you're getting reacquainted with the people. You're asking them if anything changed with the home since you last talked. If you are there doing a 2-step appointment and you're talking to them about their goals, and I would hope that you're kind of talking about that as they're giving you the tour of the home. You're asking questions, you know, not only about the home, but okay, so why are you moving? What is your goal? Like, when are you planning to be out? Are you wanting to buy? Like, you're still asking some qualifying questions, are you not? Because they're moving for a reason. And you're trying to find out their why and why they're doing this. So if they're like, well, we have to be out in 60 days because we have a job transfer or we're moving to another state. Well, that you need to kind of file that in the forefront of your head, because you're like, all right, well then when it comes down to pricing, we have to be in line. And I have to constantly remind them, if you need to be sold in 30 or 60 days, we have to reflect that in our value of what we're going to list the house for and market it. Okay. So, but believe it or not, I have been on listing appointments, and I don't know, Amy or Ryan, if you've experienced this, you know, you may be talking to them up front, either over the phone or you go out there for a first time visit, and then you could come back and things change. So you've got to be prepared for that, and you've got to ask them, so anything changed since we last met? You know, you told me this, you told me that. Has anything changed? And so while you're there at the appointment, you're almost having to reset expectations. But I think it's a good time to then set expectations. Hey, if you sent a pre-listing packet, did you review my pre-listing packet? No. Okay, well, fine, that's fine. We're still going to go over the process. You got to gauge where they're at. You got to meet them where they're at on that listing appointment. Okay, because it's not a slam dunk. We hope it is, like when people start referring us, right? But let me tell you, even when people refer you, it's not always a slam dunk. So My thing is, if you get comfortable with how you're doing a listing presentation and you start having a system and a routine with it, keep doing it no matter who they are. Okay? Because this is your business. It's a little bit different than the person you are. This is your business. Okay? And then you're going to go over all the value data and the marketing plan that you have. Okay? Because they really want to know. Yes, we've done a lot of the small talk. We've done a lot of that rapport bonding. I've gotten your goals. I kind of know what you're wanting to do. Want to make sure nothing changed. But now let's go over my findings. Hey, I did my research. I want to go over with you and let's talk through this. And let's talk through how we can determine the value of your home, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. So question, are you guys afraid of some objections that they're gonna throw at you while you're on the appointment? Because let's talk about that.
I'm afraid they're not going to give me an objection.
Oh, they will. They're gonna probably give you the most objections.
No, that's the point. Is to me, the objections are indications of them actually wanting to do something, as opposed to they've thought through the process.
Mm-hmm. Uh-oh, you froze. Okay, there you are.
Oh, that was weird.
Yeah. What is your biggest fear or the biggest objection you feel like you might get on a listing appointment?
Oh, we don't want to list it with an agent.
Okay, that could be one. What's another one?
I think it's the commission, the trying to negotiate off a 6% and going down to 5.5, 5, sometimes even lower than that these days. People are greedy and, so they want more money in their pocket. They don't feel that you do. They don't feel like you do a whole lot of work. You're just basically listing something for them. The house sells itself, blah, blah, blah. And
do you believe that though? Do you believe that?
That the house sells itself? Depends on the house.
Well, but do you believe that you don't do a whole lot and you just stick a sign in the yard and go to lunch?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
This is now, before I got my license, I used to think that. And then once I became the realtor, way more to do than what I thought it was. And I even told you, I think I told you that in day one, that this is more than just opening up a door and like, oh, this is a bedroom, this is da-da-da. It's way more. There's definitely a lot more work, than doing that, for sure.
I think another objection is their perception of value for their home as opposed to the empirical evidence you're presenting to them. I think that's something that you're going to run into a lot. You're going to see folks say, no, Tom, Terry, Jane, and Amy all down the street, they all sold their house for $635. So my house has to be $650.
Yeah.
Not that I'm currently going through.
Yeah.
But then I like the class that we did, where you did the comps, like broke down comps, like to upgrades and,
the pricing strategy.
Where do you feel that your house is worth? This house sold at $430. This house sold at $390, but this one at $430 has high-end cabinetry and granite, and this one down here has no upgrades, and you kind of have a little bit in the middle, so I think having that visual for them,
I think when you're on listing appointments, what you have to understand is like you're going to come up against objections. And like John was just saying, objections are just they just want more information. They're trying to just clarify more information. And I think what you have to do is you're having to gain agreement from the seller on two major things, which is the price of their home, right? That's kind of the first thing. Wouldn't you agree? You've got to gain their agreement. So gaining somebody's agreement is presenting them with the data, hard factual data, and having a conversation with them and talking them through it. And just like you were saying, Cassandra, when we do that pricing strategy, it's okay, you know what? Yes, let's show you a whole entire range of all the sales in this market. And this home sold at $490, but guess what? This home had this, 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 and this. And these homes in the mid-range have this, this, and this. Where do you feel like your home falls? So we're flipping it back on them to be like, yeah, you're right. Okay, where would I fall? And then you kind of understand where they're coming from, and you're going to decide, am I going to be working with a realistic seller? That comes into not only just personality though. I think that also comes into just, you know, are they realistic? Not just their personality, whether they're a DIS or a C, but whether they're realistic or not. Okay. Do y'all want to hear, do y'all know who Jared James is? No? Okay. He's another speaker slash coach slash trainer in the real estate industry. And I've shown this before to other ramp classes, but he has the 3 biggest commission objections, because I think once you get past gaining agreement from the seller on the value of their home and where they're going to be as far as a list price, then you're naturally talking about commission, are you not? I mean, most of the time you get that out of the way. That's the thing. They want to know what the value of their home is, but then they want to talk about maybe they don't want to pay you 6 or 7% or whatever your fee is. So I've always loved this take. The reason he recorded this on YouTube, he did a whole thing at R4 convention one year that got me hooked on watching a lot of his material. So I want to show this to y'all and share. So these are good because you are going to come up against these 3 types of objections when you're on a listing appointment. So if this can give you some dialogue and a resource to go back to, I think you're going to like it.
And it means the world to me, all of you that share it with your friends and colleagues in the industry, really just in sales in general, and watch these in your.
Hold on, I thought I shared the sound.
You did, it was just not very loud.
Oh, okay. Okay, hold on. Let me turn up the volume then. Okay. All right, here we go.
Offices. Today, I am going to talk about we're going to talk about solving the 3 most common commission objections, okay? And this is something that you're going to want to watch. You're going to want to watch it over and over again. You're going to want to watch it in your offices, because when you look at the skill level in our industry, it is not super high, okay? You've heard me say many times that we learn how to pass tests, but not how to run the businesses. And at the same time, one of the things that enough of us don't do is that we're not practicing on a regular basis. But the question that I always ask people when I'm live at an event is I say, hey, if you go to the Olympics and you win 2nd place, what do you get? You get a silver medal, you get all that glory, you get whatever. When you go to a listing appointment and you win 2nd place, what do you get? You get nothing, okay? And so many of us are coming in 2nd place because we're winging it when we go out and we're not really sure what to say. And we even hear the word like script. I call them dialogues, but we hear scripts and we go, I'm not script. I'm not doing that. That's too salesy. That's too whatever. When the truth of the matter is, it's just a matter of training. Like, it's just a matter of knowing. I'm not a scripted person in the sense that A, B, A, B, A, B. They say this, you say this. They say this, you say this. That kind of a thing. But I do believe in the sense that we need to understand dialogues and scripts from having a full buffet available to us. Meaning that when somebody says something to you, you know where to go in the buffet. Oh, it's time for dessert. Oh, it's time for an appetizer. Oh, it's time for dinner. Oh, it's time for, you know where to go. And you can only do that when you're truly listening to the person and then knowing the best response that gets you to the place that's good for them and good for you, okay? And so today I'm going to talk about 3 of the most common, and by the way, this script, this dialogue it's in our coaching program. If you're not in our coaching program, you don't have access to this, but I'll give you some of the words for some of this. But the 3 most common that I'm going to talk about today that are so common in our industry are going to be what I call the alpha seller. I'll explain that in a second. Going to be the discount brokerage seller. Okay, I think you know what that is. And then I'm going to do the apples to apples seller. Okay, so we're going to cover those 3 things: the alpha seller, the discount brokerage seller, and the apples to apples seller. And that covers the majority of the objections people get. But I will cover other ones. We do cover other ones in our program and have some more extensive stuff too, but these are the 3 I'm going to cover today. So first one, the alpha seller. If you have never dealt with an alpha seller, I promise you, you just haven't been in the industry long enough, okay? Now, the alpha seller can be the man or the woman. It can be either one, okay? The alpha seller, in case you're wondering, is that person that usually at the beginning of the listing presentation, before you go through all your stuff, will just stop and say, you know what? I don't want to waste any of our time. If we can't first agree on your commission, none of this even matters. I don't want to waste any of our time. Like, that's the alpha. They are to the point. They don't want to waste time. What's your commission? None of this matters if we can't agree on a commission. And what most of you have been taught to do when a situation like that arises is you pick up your ball and go home because you didn't know what to say. So you're like, I'm not working with that person. I'm not gonna, and that's what we've been taught to do. And it's ludicrous, okay? An alpha only respects a larger alpha, okay? Any of you have a dog? Like, if my dog does something wrong, dogs know who the alpha is, okay? And so if my dog does something wrong when we're gone and we come home, my kids come in, my dog greets them. My wife comes in, my dog greets them. I walk in, my dog runs under the dining room table. Dogs know who the alpha is, okay? And so you gotta have a little bit of alpha in you if you're going to deal with other alphas. Sometimes it's learned, sometimes you're just playing the game and you gotta win the Academy Award, but they only respect a larger alpha. So when they say to you, you know what, I don't wanna waste anybody's time here. If we can't first agree on a commission, then none of this even matters. How you're gonna respond is you're gonna say, you know what, I don't wanna waste any of my time either. By the way, notice what I said? I don't wanna waste any of my time either. So I'll tell you what, let's make a deal. We're gonna negotiate my commission right now, but you have to promise me one thing. If you win this negotiation, you have to promise me that you will never hire me to sell the largest asset you're ever gonna own. Deal? And then just look at them. Because now the wheels start spinning and the steam starts coming out and they're trying to process what exactly you just said and did, because that makes complete sense. Why in the world would you hire somebody who couldn't even win a negotiation with you to now sell the largest asset you're ever gonna own? And now they start thinking to themselves, well, crap, I can't hire the person from yesterday. I beat down to blank percent and I can't. And usually at that point, when you at that moment like the larger alpha and you say those words, usually the spouse jumps in at that point and goes, okay, you happy? You got to say what you got to say? Okay. And now they respect you, okay? So that's what you do. I don't wanna waste anybody's time. If we can't first agree on a commission, then none of this even matters. Great, I don't wanna waste my time either, so let's make a deal. We're gonna negotiate my commission right now, but you have to promise me one thing. If you win this negotiation, you have to promise me that you'll never hire me to sell the largest asset you're ever gonna own. Deal? That's it, guys. Very simple. That's the alpha seller.
All right, I'm gonna stop that real quick. Alpha seller, what personality type would that be?
D.
A D. So I will say this. I personally like Jared James. He's not for everybody, but I think what I do want you to take away with is a couple of these things that he's gonna go through. They do take practice. Put it in your own words if you like anything he's saying, but it's also about the confidence. I mean, if he has a lot of confidence when he comes across this, because he's also saying in this one, I'm respecting my time too. So, alrighty, not much longer. I'll get to, so we can get the other two and then we'll be about done for the day.
Next one, the discount brokerage seller. You guys have dealt with these, right? You're dealing with these all over the place. And usually the seller is gonna say something like this. You know, I really like you, but I just don't know why I'd pay so much to sell my house when there are now companies out there that will do it at a fraction of the cost you and other agents are offering. And if you really think about it, guys, if you come from a place of empathy, you get what they're saying. If you thought something was exactly the same value, they're exactly the same, why would you pay more? Doesn't make any sense. So although we know that it's not true, that's their perception, and their perception is all that matters at that moment, okay? So I really like you, but I don't know why. Perfect, that makes a lot of sense. Here's how you're gonna respond. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I can completely understand why it would be enticing to get what you would feel like. I'm going to make them feel like, hey, I get why that makes sense to you, okay? I'm gonna validate that for them. Would be the same selling experience for a much cheaper cost. What I don't ever do is bash or degrade my competition, but it is my job to make sure that you're asking the right questions when making such a big decision regarding the sale of the largest asset you're ever going to own. What do you guys keep noticing in all of these objection handlers? I am bringing it back and reminding them, this isn't selling lemonade, this is the largest asset you're ever gonna own, right? And I'm bringing it back to that. Okay, with that being said, my only question would be, why would someone choose to do the same amount of work that I plan to do and seemingly market your house in the exact same way at a fraction of the cost unless they simply couldn't make it at a traditional brokerage and get paid like a professional? Just a question. A lot of times I'll follow that up too, and I'll say, and I'll ask another good question, and I'll say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you know, If you got offered, you were looking for a job and you got offered the exact same job at two places on the opposite sides of the street, and everything's the same. The hours are the same, the culture is the same, the workload is the same, everything's the same. But this one offers you a quarter of the price that this one offers you over here. Which one of those jobs would you take, Mr. and Mrs. Seller? And the answer is obvious. They're gonna be like, well, I'd take the one that's gonna pay me more because I wouldn't do the same amount of work for less money, whatever, right? So I can see why you think it makes sense that they're doing the same work for less money, but they're either not doing the same work for the less money, or they simply couldn't make it at a traditional brokerage. And why would you ever want that person selling your home, right? And a lot of times too, I always bring that back up and I just go, hey, a professional, you notice the words I'm using, a professional. Wouldn't you want a professional? Wouldn't you want somebody who's paid like a professional? Wouldn't you want a largest asset you're ever gonna own? Largest asset? I'm planting these seeds over and over again, but all I'm really doing is asking good questions. It's up to them to answer the questions because I'm not bashing or degrading my competition, I'm just asking questions, right? That's the way to handle that. Next one. The apples to apples seller. You've all dealt with this seller. And they're gonna say something like, you know what? I really like you, but blank said they would do it for blank percentage. Would you do it for that percentage? You dealt with that person? I really like you, but you know, Danny was in here just yesterday and said he'd do it for blank percent, right? And they say something like that. Here's how you respond to that. And again, this is crucial that you have rapport. This is crucial that you're smiling. This is crucial that you've positioned yourself at this point as the professional. All of these things are crucial at this moment, okay? So they say, I really like you, but blank said they do it for blank percent. You're gonna stop and you're gonna go, well, at least blank knows what they're worth. Just pause and smile. At least blank knows what they're worth, okay? But I also know what I'm worth, and I know what your home is worth too, and lucky for you, I'm gonna fight for its value the same way that I fight for my own. Very simple, guys. That's called a tie down. They could say, hey, blank said they do it for blank percent, would you? Hey, at least blank knows what they're worth. Awkward pause. Allow for an awkward pause, okay? But I also know what I'm worth, and I also know what your home is worth. And lucky for you, I'm gonna fight for its value the same way that I fight for my own. That's a tie down. In order for me to be willing to lower what I am worth and what I'm going to charge you here, they have to be willing to allow me to sell their house for less because I fight for both of their values exactly the same, okay? And then if you want, you could even do a follow-up question to that and say, hey, and isn't that the type of professional that you want representing you in selling the largest asset you're ever gonna own? You could do that, or you could just end it on the line that I said before, okay? Those are called tie downs, okay? Now, some of you are listening to this and you're like, why don't I use that? Why don't I say that? Why don't I, you know, and instead you're fighting in other ways and you're making the same arguments that other people are making. Your arguments have to make sense, but the way they make the most sense is just by asking the right questions to people, letting them answer in their own head. And more importantly, people fight for value. They fight for price. They fight for, you know, whatever it is when they see a difference in value, right? Like I didn't go in when I bought this shirt, these jeans, this watch, these shoes and say, hey, you know, so-and-so down the road is selling blank brand for 1/10 of the cost. Well, they're doing that because that's what blank brand is worth. But I don't do that because I know what kind of watch, what kind of shoe, I know what they're worth. When it comes to real estate, it's absolutely no different, or whatever it is you sell. People fight for that lower price when they see a difference in the value that is being offered. And when you're doing exactly what everybody else is doing, you can't blame them for thinking that. But one of the ways that you prove that your value is above and beyond the other people that they have dealt with is by being a professional in the moment and actually demonstrating to them how you negotiate and how you ask the right questions and how you fight for value. Because now when they start to think about who's going to actually negotiate the price on the largest home that the largest asset I'm ever going to own in my life, this is the person I need representing me because they're better at this than I am. That's what you need to be doing, okay? Guys, as always, if you enjoyed this, give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment below. Let me know if you enjoyed this.
Okay, y'all. Well, that's a little bit Jared James if you've never seen him. He is one of those speakers you'll see out in the industry, and I've pretty much a lot of the classes when we get to this stage, I always bring this up about overcoming objections because I really like how you handle those three. Those are actually really, he's spot on. Those are the three most common ones you're going to get. So you can find him on YouTube, always find him there, and, you know, watch that over and over again.
Does he always talk that fast?
Uh-huh. He does. Even in a public speaking forum, he speaks that fast. Mm-hmm. But he's nice, and he'll take a selfie with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but he brings good energy to the stage too. So, but that's during the appointment. Like you're going to, like, there's always going to be, you think you're only going to be in there and in and out in an hour. There's a lot of meat on the bone that ends up getting covered during a listing appointment that can last up to 2 hours. And you're going to be like, you just sharpen that axe and just keep practicing those skills. Cause that's kind of where that's where you're going to be showing your value. Like that's high time to show your value about what you're worth and that you are a professional. It's just a constant reminder you're a professional in this business. So handling the objections, and then ask for the business, y'all. Ask for the business. Does anybody have a way that they feel comfortable yet asking for the business when they're on a listing appointment, John? Out of curiosity.
Sure, mine is the same thing I do here at my job. I always kind of, I've at that point, if I'm asking for the business, I've already kind of gleamed that we're at that point. I give them a chance, a scale of 1 to 10. Hey, 1 being you would never ever hire me, 10 being you'd hire me right now. How do you currently feel about it? And they're going to give me a number. They're going to give me a 6. They're going to give me a 7. They're going to give me an 8. They're going to give me a 1. And I follow it up immediately with the number they give me, unless it's a 10. And then I say, all right, sign here. Let's keep it moving. I said, okay, what would it take to get you from a 7 to a 10? They will give me their objection. I will then readdress the objection and then say, hey, how about now we sign up? And so I always confirm that there's no objections before I ask for the business. So that's how I ask, just to make sure there's nothing else pending. You know, some of the things that he covered earlier, same idea, you know, my friend's a real estate agent. I've got, you know, XYZ situation going on. I try to get all that out of the way before because I want a clear mind. A confused mind is going to say no, a clear mind is going to say yes. I'm sure Ryan knows a little bit about that. I'm sure everyone who's sold any kind of thing knows a little bit about that. Any confusion, is there any questions, is any objections, they're going to say no, just out of sheer comfortability. But, you know, once I've got past whatever the objection is, I'm just going to say, hey, why don't we do this? You know, and then if they know, then, I mean, I told Kira this is something we had a conversation in our house. When you don't have any business and you haven't asked for the business, you've got nothing to lose. Like at the end of the day, if they say no, you still got the 0 that you came in the house with. But if you left and never asked, then, you know, how would you have known? You're cutting your 0% into 50%. They could say yes, they could say no. I like those odds significantly better than 0%. Yeah,
very true. You really can't be afraid to ask for the business. You're there for a reason.
The worst case happens is you leave with what you came in with, and that's the worst case. They're not going to like smack you and be like, why would you, how dare you do your job and ask me to sell my house? So
what if they say, okay, y'all, what if you are asking for the business and they say, well, we need to think about it. We need to think about making a decision. Or if they're interviewing other agents. Some do that. Some interview 3 agents. How would you do a tie down or something like that from there? Where would you go from there? If John, you're the agent and you ask me for the business and I say, well, you know what, I've interviewed 2 other agents and I've got to think about it and I need to make a decision.
Sure. Ms. Laura, I guess my question to you is, when you say you have to think about it, what in my presentation of value and the things that I bring to the table, what is it about that isn't enticing to you?
I think it's where you told me my value is in my house. I'm not so sure I'm on board with that.
Sure. And at the end of the day, your house is going to be as valuable as the market will allow it to be. You know, Ted, Tim, Terry, myself, anyone can come in and tell you, yeah, sure, I can sell your house for $50,000, $60,000 over what the real value is. I just wanted to present you with empirical data. This is what the market is doing in and around you. Could we ask for more? Sure. But I think, to be fair to you, we would have to be within what the market would allow. And if that's the only whole hiccup, then let's go back to the drawing board and kind of see again why you think the value is where you think it is, and then we can kind of compare those two. And maybe I've missed something that you know that I don't know. I mean, you live here. I'm just visiting currently. Sure, I feel like I'm the subject matter expert, but I haven't lived in your house for the last 10 years like you have. So maybe you know some secrets that I don't know. Let's go back and look at it again. I'll re-engage until I get past that objection. And then I'll say, all right, so if it's just a matter of the value of your home, everything else you see value in me, correct?
I do.
Well, let's not miss it just because you're worried that I'm not going to get you the most money.
Okay. Well, I do need I do need what they proposed, XYZ down the road, brokerage, because I'm going to do this with my money and this with my money and this with my money. And I'm planning on that. I really want that. They gave me some really good hope. So we're like 20,000 different.
Sure. And I'm assuming they provided you empirical data on why they gave you that number.
Somewhat, but not like yours.
Okay. At the end of the day, I think that the conversation really needs to be, can anyone, myself included, come in here and give you smoke and mirrors and give you sunshine and rainbows and tell you everything's going to be great just to get my name on the dotted line so that I can then, me getting, 6% of what you think we're going to get and getting 6% of what actually sells doesn't matter to me at the end of the day, as long as my name's on the line. However, if I'm going to be working in your best interest, I need to tell you, what the market is showing. So I don't think it's fair to you. I don't think it's fair to them. I don't think it's fair to me to present you with anything other than the facts. Okay. I mean, if you want to sit and think about things that maybe make believe that they didn't provide evidence to support, sure. If you want to go ask them to provide evidence with it, I would love the evidence too, so that I can have a better understanding of what's going on in the market around here. But based off all the things that I'm showing you here, these are where I see it at. That makes sense.
Okay. All right. Good. Thank you for playing along.
Sure. Listen, you can so tell John's been in sales forever.
Yes. Yeah.
He's got a lie. That's great.
I know. Yeah. Well, I just, you're going to have to kind of, he was rolling with it. I actually could have been really, a lot more tough on you. I was just not going to do it for sake of time today. So.
Well, thank you. That's very considerate. I appreciate you. Yeah. I had no idea on role playing Lori being the crappy customer.
Yeah, no. But I think another thing when you are competing, it's, you're continue to ask questions, continue to find out where you stand with those other realtors. Don't be afraid to ask what the other realtors are telling them, because we can lose out on something because of a conversation we're not aware of. Like they've had some kind of conversation with the other realtors, they've had a conversation with their significant other. If it's the conversation we're not having with them, that can be the big deficit. Just kind of and I'm just kind of reiterating kind of what John said, because he was saying, what was it that we didn't touch on? Yeah, and it's like, oh, guess what? I didn't tell you I was going to use this to do this, this, and this. You've got to find out what that is when you're really trying to ask for the business, and just don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. So let's do, we're going to wrap this up. I promise 2 more minutes, but that was the during. The after. So question, even if you've gotten the listing and you've gotten the commitment from them afterwards, I still think you follow up with it. First of all, be optimistic and take the listing paperwork with you. I know we can do this all electronically, but if you're on the appointment, take the paperwork with you. I have seen it happen. People say yes, you send them that listing agreement and they just don't sign it. And they change their mind because they just sat in bed that night and thought it over. I don't think there's any harm in it. Y'all, we can scan and put it in our app file as far as the technicality goes. Bring that paperwork with you. I know that's old school, but I think if you want that listing, just get it done there. If you have tried and you just can't get them to commit and they are adamant about they're going to analyze, maybe they're those C's. They're going to analyze every single realtor and their plan and everything that they told. Well, then, okay, fine. Try to respect that boundary a little bit. And then you follow up and continue to follow up with a thank you. I don't know what's wrong with doing a thank you text after the appointment, a thank you video. I know some agents that were starting to put that in place, doing a quick video and then texting it over to them, doing a handwritten note as a practice, as a thank you as well. And continue to follow up. And if you didn't get the listing and you missed out on it, because maybe you're not going to get every single one of them, ask what it was about your presentation, about what you could do better, because you're always looking for ways to improve. So the after follow-up is still important. If you don't get it or you don't hear from them, don't just assume, oh gosh, they chose somebody else. I don't really want to know the reason. No, call, they gave you a chance, call back. This is important to you. You want to know how you can improve. All right, if you didn't get the listing. All right. So the before, during, and after is important. And I think that's our time today. What do you guys, any feedback, comments, thoughts?
I could ask a quick question, Lori. So I met with a lady who contacted me about selling her house. And we actually went over and met with her. But we're not going to sell it or even probably list it till the end of January or beginning of February because of when she wants to be out.
Right.
But I did not get her to sign the paperwork because it's a little too early, right?
Yeah, now there's different theories with that. You could go ahead and have her sign it and you're going to put the list date way in the future. Like you can go ahead and enter into the agreement and they've signed it and they're agreeing to work with you. You're just not going to put it live on the market until February.
Right.
2022. You can do that. You can predate it.
Okay. Or is it okay to say, hey, I would like to sign this to make sure that I have blocked out time for you in January? Is that a good way to approach that, or what is the best way to kind of present that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I always said, okay, you know what? I totally understand that you want to put it on the market on this date, January and February. Why don't we do this? Let's go ahead and do the paperwork now, because that's one less thing that we have to do. Because you're going to be doing a lot. You're doing a lot to get your home ready. We've got a lot to do. I can also start getting all my marketing in place and just flip the switch and the green light goes and we're going to get marketing done. That's how I always presented it. Because there were a lot of people back in the day, they needed some time to clean their house out and do all that stuff. And I just always wanted to try to lock it down.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Were there a group chat about the classes tomorrow? I think I've already taken the Matrix CE classes.